Hi guys, Patrick here. In today's session we're going to be exploring some of the animation features of Photoshop. You should all have access to Photoshop, and if you don't, you can find out how to do that on Moodle. Now, I know some of you don't have capable enough machines to run it, and if so, don't worry. It might still be good to watch this tutorial though if you're not already aware of the animation features in Photoshop. So first things first, we're going to bring up a new canvas. This doesn't need to be any particular size. We're going to go to Window, and we're going to enable the timeline feature. We're going to click on Create Video Timeline. You can use the slider to zoom in. This timeline isn't very different to After Effects or any other kind of animation software. Obviously, this layer 0 in the layer panel is the same as the layer 0 in the timeline. We're going to trim it a bit shorter. The sort of standard layers you create in Photoshop are static, they're not animated. Anything I draw on them will remain on screen for the whole duration of the layer. Let's get rid of that. I'll make another one of these static layers. I'm going to draw on this layer a background that will remain static and in place through the whole animation. Here's one I made earlier. Quick bit of shading, bit of colour, just a quick background sketch. Done. We're going to set up our timeline for drawn animation. You want to make sure that the timeline shortcuts are enabled, because that's going to save you a whole lot of time. Now we're going to click on Set Timeline Frame Rate. And at the moment it's set to 30 frames per second. And we don't have to draw 30 frames per second, so we're going to bring that down. The standard for drawn animation is generally just 12 frames a second. So we're going to make the timeline a bit shorter, and we're going to create our animation video layer. So we're going to go to Layer, then down to Video Layers, and we're going to click on New Blank Video Layer. There we go. As you can see, if we draw and then skip ahead to the next frame, the first drawing vanishes and we can create a new one. We can animate. Yay! So it's much easier to animate if we enable the onion skinning, and that allows us to see a faded version of the frame before. So what I want to do is animate a projectile, a cannonball, that's going to hit the castle roof here. It's going to reach its highest point here. It's going to travel in an arc like that. So that's going to be our guide. I've created that on a static layer. I'm just going to leave that there, and I'm going to go back to my animation layer. I'm going to begin to draw. So it's travelling slowly at first, and then I'm going to make the gaps bigger. It's travelling faster as it accelerates. If you remember your squash and stretch from the 12 principles, I'm going to stretch the cannonball to give that impression of motion. It's beginning to slow down now as it reaches the highest point in its arc. And then it begins to speed up again as it falls. So I'm going to begin to make the gaps wider again, stretch it out. It's going to hit the roof here, and it's going to deform, hitting the roof. Give a real impression of impact if it squashes up against that roof. Obviously not realistic, but there we go. It's going to bounce off, and it's going to slow, and then it begins to speed up again as it falls. Falling. I'm going to stretch it. It's going to hit the floor. It's going to bounce off the floor. Let's turn the onion skinning and the guide layer off and see what we've got. So, very rough animation, but it would do for an animatic. Let's add some details to that impact. So we can have some bits of shrapnel, some bits of roof tile flying off the roof where the cannonball hits it. So another bit flying off that way. Another bit flying off that way. Now I'm going to paint the cannonball with the paint bucket tool, just skipping through the frames using the forward and backward arrow keys. You get the idea. There we go. So I'm going to add some marks on the roof where the cannonball hits. So I'm use static layers, just to add a little mark, a bit of damage to the roof. There, create a new layer, and then another layer where it hits the ground, and then another little crater on the floor, and another. There we go. That just adds another little bit of detail. Now there's so much more that you could do cleaning up this animation, you know, making the drawings better. You could animate flags, you could animate clouds. I'm just animating a little bit of smoke coming out the chimney. There's so many things you can do, but we're just going to leave it there as a rough animatic style animation. So when we're done, we're going to go to export. We're going to go to save for web legacy, and we're going to click on that. That is going to allow us to save it as a GIF. We're just going to hit save. And so this rough, very rough animation hopefully serves as a good introduction to animating in Photoshop, and you know the potential it could have for your FMP. Hopefully that's been helpful. Take care everyone. Thanks very much.